Welcome friends to this course on understanding episodist drama. We are in week 7 and this is going to be lecture number 1. Today we'll discuss an American episodist playwright Edward Albee. Edward Albee was born on March 12, 1928. He was adopted by Reed Albee and Frances Albee, a very affluent theatrical family. However, Edward Albee's relationship with his adoptive parents was fraught with tensions. His mother primarily disapproved of his artistic pursuits. He was expelled from several schools for his non-conformist behavior. In his early 20s, Albee moved to Greenwich Village, where he immersed himself in bohemian and artistic community life. Later, he would evolve into one of the most famous American playwrights, winning 3 Pulitzer Prizes. Albee's work is often associated with the theater of the absurd, although he had rejected this label. In his plays, Albee examined the human alienation, fragility of social relationships, and the power of unspoken truths. Edward Albee remains a towering figure in the 20th century American drama. His plays continue to be celebrated for unflinching representations of societal norms and human vulnerabilities. The Jew Story was Edward Albee's debut play. It premiered on 28 September 1959 at Siller Theatre, Germany. It established Albee as a key figure in modernist drama. We'll discuss this play in great detail in later slides to come. Who is Afraid of Virginia Woolf is another famous play by Edward Albee. It was performed in the year 1962. It revolves around 2 couples, George, a middle-aged history professor, and his wife Martha, and another couple, Nick and Honey. Throughout the play, George and Martha indulge in sarcastic banter. Their conversations expose the dysfunctional marriage they are having. Albee presents marriage as a battlefield where love, hatred, and dependency coexist, revealing the complexities of human relationships. The play won the Tony Award for the Best Play and was later adapted into a film. A Delicate Balance was another fine play written by Albee, which was performed in the year 1966, for which Albee won Pulitzer Prize. The play explores themes of fear, isolation, and family dynamics, which requires a delicate balance to hold the relationships meaningfully. Seascape was a 2-act play by Edward Albee, which intermingled realism and fantasy. The story follows an older married couple, Nancy and Charlie, who are relaxing on a sea beach. Their conversation is interrupted by the sudden appearance of 2 human-sized lizards from the sea named Leslie and Sarah. The entire play is a conversation between the human couple and the lizard couple. Seascape 2 won the Pulitzer Prize for Drama in the year 1975. Three Tall Women is another powerful 2-act play by Edward Albee, which explores themes of aging and mortality. The story revolves around 3 women, A, B, and C, representing 3 different stages of a woman's life. A is a wealthy, elderly woman in her 90s, reflecting upon her life with bitterness and humor. B is a middle-aged woman in her 50s, working as a caretaker of A. C is a young woman in her 20s who represents the younger idealistic self of A. Like Samuel Beckett's Krapp's Last Tape, 3 Tall Women is about memories, regrets, and relationships. The play culminates in a poignant reflection upon the impermanence of life and the inevitability of death. Edward Albee's The Goat, or Who is Sylvia, is a provocative, tragic comic play that explores the absurdity of human life and the limits of love and societal norms. The story revolves around a successful architect named Martin who happens to have fallen in love with a goat. We will discuss this play in great detail in our next class. The plays of Edward Albee explore the loneliness and alienation that pervade modern urban life. Often his plays question the purpose of existence and the futility of attempt to find out the meaning of human life in an indifferent world. In addition to being existentialist explorations of human life, Edward Albee's plays also offer incisive commentary on contemporary America. Stephen Bottoms writes, and I quote, Albee's one-act plays called America to be self-reflexive at the start of a decade in which the Kennedy and Martin Luther King assassinations, the Watts riots in Los Angeles, the Vietnam War, and the Stonewall protests of gays and bisexuals would all force the nation to confront its failings. Like Elmer Rice, Clifford Odets, or Arthur Miller, though far removed from their brand of dramatic polemics, Albee wanted to shake up American complacency. Albee's plays critique cultural, social and political landscape of America. You would remember that 1960s and 1970s in America saw the rise of counter-cultural movements which contested traditional norms and conventional social moralities. It was a period when feminist movement and LGBTQ plus movement got momentum. In many of Albee's plays, we find out references to LGBTQ plus movement. Edward Albee's America was also a period of political unrest. This was a period of Vietnam War which had polarized the American society. During this period, assassinations of John F. Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr. will also take place. This was also a period when Americans had started getting disillusioned with what we call the Great American Dream. Albee's plays reflect all these political and moral anxieties of the Americans. We'll discuss two major plays by Albee to find out how accurately Albee represented America in his plays. The first play which we are going to discuss is titled The Jew's Story. The play premiered on 28 September 1958 at Schiller Theatre, Germany. It was presented as a part of double bill alongside German staging of Samuel Beckett's play Crabbe's Last Tape. This one-act play takes place in a central park. Peter, a middle-class man in his 40s, is reading quietly on one of the benches of the park. Suddenly, Jerry, another man in his 40s but troubled and disheveled, appears and starts a conversation with Peter. Jerry informs Peter that he has just come from the Jew. He has a story to tell, although we never come to know what is that story. At the end of the play, Jerry forces Peter to kill him, and the play ends with Jerry's murder by Peter. Let us examine some passages from the play to understand how this story unfolds. Jerry says, I have been to the Jew. I said, I have been to the Jew. Mister, I have been to the Jew. Peter says, what? I'm sorry, were you talking to me? Jerry says, I went to the Jew and then I walked until I came. Jerry says, I tell you about it soon. Do you mind if I ask you questions? Peter says, oh, not really. I'll tell you what I'll do. I don't talk to many people except to say like, give me a beer, or where is John, or what time does the feature go on, or keep your hands to yourself, buddy, you know, things like that. Peter says, I must say I don't. Jerry says, but every once in a while, I like to talk to somebody, really talk, like to get to know somebody, know all about him. And Peter says, and am I the guinea pig for today? Jerry says, on a sun-drenched Sunday afternoon like this, who better than a nice married man with 2 daughters and a dog? No, 2 dogs. His head again, no dogs. Oh, that's a shame. but you look like an animal, man. Cats, cats, but that can't be your idea. No, sir, your wife and daughters. Is there anything else I should know? The conversation reflects Jerry's desire for human connections and his dissatisfaction with the ordinary conversations. Jerry is aware that most of the conversations are hollow and superficial. Therefore, Jerry desires to have a very meaningful conversation with Peter. Jerry yearns for a deeper conversation so that he can truly get to know somebody. Jerry calls Peter Animal Man because Peter has been living a domesticated life. Peter's stable, family-oriented character can be contrasted with Jerry's disorganized life. Although Peter is uninterested, Jerry continues to talk to Peter. He tells him the story of a lady and her dog. The lady lives in the same apartment where Jerry lives, and she has a dog. Jerry says, and I quote, "Well, thanks. Anyway, she has a dog, and I'll tell you about the dog, and she and her dog are the gatekeepers of my dwelling. The woman is bad enough. She leans around in the entrance hall, spying to see that I don't bring in things or people. And when she has had her mid-afternoon pint of lemon-flavored gin, she always stops me in the hall and grabs a hold of my coat or my arm, and she presses her disgusting body up against me to keep me in a corner so she can talk to me. The smell of her body and her breath, you can't imagine it. And somewhere in the back of that pea-sized brain of hers, an organ developed just enough to let her eat, drink and emit, she has some foul parody of sexual desire. And I, Peter, am the object of her sweetie lust." Peter says, "That's disgusting, that's horrible." Jerry goes on and he says, "But I have found a way to keep her off. When she talks to me, when she presses herself to my body and mumbles about her room and how I should come there, I merely say, 'But love, was not yesterday enough for you? And the day before?' Then she puzzles, she makes slits of her tiny eyes, she sways a little, and then, Peter, it is at this moment that I think I might be doing some good in that tormented house. A simple-minded smile begins to form on her unthinkable face, and she giggles and groans as she thinks about yesterday and the day before, as she believes and relieves what never happened. Then she motions to that black monster of a dog she has, and she goes back to her room, and I am safe until our next meeting." Here, Jerry is recounting his uncomfortable and troubled interaction with the lady of the apartment. The lady appears to be intrusive, socially inappropriate and emotionally disturbed, who is trying to perhaps seduce Jerry. The lady's behavior towards Jerry is sexually charged. Although this grotesque representation of her sexual behavior is one-sided. Jerry describes her desire as a foul parody of sexual desire. Jerry seems to suggest that even love has been contaminated and it has been replaced by lust. His description of her desire as a foul parody indicates his negative perception of human intimacy and sexuality. For Jerry, human interactions are no more about love or shared desire, but rather about control, manipulation and rejection. His experiences with the woman reinforce his belief that people are not capable of genuine, meaningful relations, and that desire is often twisted and damaging. After describing his horrific and disgusting encounter with the lady of the apartment, Jerry moves on to describe the story of his encounter with the lady's dog. The dog has been described as a black monster, a grotesque figure. Jerry calls him a black monster of beast, an oversized head, tiny ears, and eyes bloodshot, infected maybe. A body, you can see the ribs through the skin. The dog is black, all black except for the bloodshot eyes. Like Jerry, the dog is also an unwanted creature, an outcast. However, the relationship between these two outcast figures is not harmonious. The dog tries to bite Jerry whenever he sees him. The dog's hostility towards Jerry is symbolic of the world's hostility towards him. Jerry would have been happier if the dog and the world both would have been indifferent to him. But they are not. The dog aggressively tries to pursue and chase Jerry. What should Jerry do to deal with this dog? He thinks of various possibilities, and there are two prominent ones which come to his mind. Jerry says, "Well, I thought about it up in my room one day. One of the times after I bolted upstairs and I made up my mind. I decided first I'll kill the dog with kindness, and if that does not work, I'll just kill him. So the next day I went out and bought a bag of hamburgers. He ate all the hamburgers, almost all at once, making sounds in his throat like a woman. Then, when he had finished the meat, the hamburger, and tried to eat the paper too, he sat down and smiled. I think he smiled. I know cats do. It was a very gratifying few moments. Then bam, he snarled and made for me again. The day I tried to kill the dog, I bought only one hamburger and what I thought was a murderous portion of rat poison." Thus, Jerry first decides to kill the dog with kindness. He still hopes that kindness can have some power to transform the aggressive behavior of the dog. He brings hamburgers for the dog, which the dog eats and smiles for a while. But the dog's smile is momentary. Hamburger that Jerry has brought for the dog cannot end dog's hostility towards him. However, the dog's snarling response reinforces the futility of Jerry's attempts. No matter how hard Jerry tries, the dog will try to bite him. This is similar to how the world responds to human beings. How hard you try to be good to others, they respond to you with bitterness and resentment. Like the dog, they want to bite you, they want to destroy you. The dog's aggression is a reminder of the world's hostility towards man. When Jerry realizes that he cannot win over the dog with kindness, he decides to kill him. He chooses cruelty. He chooses violence. Jerry says, "But there he was, malevolence with an erection waiting. I put the poison patty down, moved towards the stairs and watched. The poor animal gobbled the food down as usual, smiled, which made me almost sick, and then bam! But I sprinted up the stairs as usual, and the dog did not get me as usual. And it came to pass that the beast was deathly ill. I knew this because he no longer attended me, and because the landlady sobered up. She stopped me in the hall the same evening of the attempted murder and confided the information that God had struck her puppy dog as a surely fatal blow. She had forgotten her bewildered lust." So, we can see that Jerry's efforts oscillate between either extreme kindness or extreme cruelty. Jerry's extreme methods underscore Jerry's desperateness for a response. Like the dog is not indifferent to Jerry, Jerry can also not be indifferent to the dog. Jerry has failed in establishing any kind of meaningful relationship with the dog, either with kindness or with cruelty, as the dog recovers from poisoning. Jerry says, "At any rate," and you have missed the $8,000 question, Peter, "at any rate, the dog recovered his health and the landlady recovered her trust, in no way altered by Bow Wow's deliverance when I came home from a movie that was playing on 42nd Street, a movie I had seen, or one that was very much like one or several I had seen.
After the landlady told me Puppykins was better, I was so hoping for the dog to be waiting for me. I was, well, how would you put it? Enticed, fascinated? No, I don't think so. Heart-shatteringly anxious. That's it. I was heart-shatteringly anxious to confront my friend again. Now here is what I had wanted to happen. I loved the dog now and I wanted him to love me. I had tried to love and I had tried to kill, and both had been unsuccessful by themselves. I hoped that I don't really know why I expected the dog to understand anything, much less my motivations. I hoped that dog would understand. After recovering from poisoning, the dog neither loves Jerry nor attacks him. He becomes indifferent, which Jerry did not want. The dog's indifference after recovery mirrors Jerry's realization of human apathy. The interaction between Jerry and the dog can be viewed as an allegory of existential struggles. His desire for the dog to understand him is similar to a human being's desire to be understood by someone else. It is a desire for recognition and validation. His failure with the dog is not just a personal defeat, but a profound reflection of the human condition. LB suggests that there are emotional and existential divides which exist between one man and another, and it's very difficult to bridge this gap. Jerry says, man is a dog's best friend, remember? So the dog and I looked at each other. I longer than the dog, and what I saw then has been the same ever since. Whenever the dog and I see each other, we both stop where we are. We regard each other with a mixture of sadness and suspicion. And then we feign indifference. We walk past each other safely. We have an understanding. It is very sad, but you will have to admit that it is an understanding. We had made attempts at contact and we had failed. The dog has returned to garbage and I to solitary but free passage. Jerry says, I have learned that neither kindness nor cruelty by themselves, independent of each other, creates any effect beyond themselves. I have learned that two combined together at the same time are the teaching emotion. And what is gained is loss. What has been the result? The dog and I have attained a compromise, more of a bargain really. We neither love nor hurt because we don't try to reach each other. And was trying to feed the dog an act of love? And perhaps was the dog's attempt to bite me not an act of love? If we can so misunderstand, well then, why have we invented the word love in the first place? Jerry's dog story is layered with meanings. It illustrates the challenges of human and non-human communication. Despite multiple efforts of both kindness and cruelty, Jerry and the dog both fail to understand each other. Moreover, Jerry has learnt that both kindness and cruelty in this world have no lasting impact. The bargain between Jerry and the dog is pragmatic, but without deeper human meanings. Jerry's rhetorical question about love at the end of the passage reflects its ambiguity and inherent misunderstandings in human emotions. If love can manifest as both kindness and aggression, its meaning becomes unclear, challenging its validity as a concept. Jerry's reflections echo existentialist themes, the search for meaning in a seemingly indifferent world, the inevitability of isolation and the absurdity of human interactions. As Jerry rightly says in the play, it is just that if you can't deal with people, you have to make a start somewhere. Don't you see? A person has to have some way of dealing with something. If not with people, something. With a bed, with a cockroach, with a mirror. No, that's too hard. That's one of the last steps. With a cockroach, with a carpet, a roll of toilet paper. No, not that either. That's mirror too. Always check bleeding. You see how hard it is to find things with a street corner and too many things. all colors reflecting on the oily, wet streets with a wisp of smoke with a pornographic playing cards with a strong box without a lock. Jerry's frenetic monologue shows his desperate desire for interaction. Jerry suggests that if human beings cannot form meaningful interactions with other human beings, they must interact with animals, plants, or objects. Jerry lists objects: animals, cockroaches, carpets, street corners, smokes. These objects can be surrogates for human beings. Although we are aware that these objects are devoid of reciprocal connections and interactions, yet Jerry must deal with them, Jerry must interact with them to avoid or end his internal loneliness. The dialogue is a vivid portrayal of Jerry's existential crisis. Jerry is looking for meaning in a world which is without meaning, which is almost indifferent towards him. Perhaps this desire for human connection has brought Jerry to the Central Park where he happens to meet Peter. But Peter too is not interested in forming any meaningful relationship with Jerry. Peter has been living a domesticated, complacent life. He had a wife, 2 daughters, and 2 parakeets. He was happy in his own world, not bothered about what was happening to other human beings. Because Peter is so passive, Jerry goads Peter by targeting his vulnerabilities. Jerry's aggression is an attempt to jolt Peter out of his comfortable and unexamined life. Peter is a bourgeois gentleman who is mild-mannered. However, Jerry provokes him to fight with a knife. Jerry says, "Now you pick up that knife and you fight with me. You fight for your self-respect. You fight for that goddamned bench." Peter says, "No, let go of me. Help." Jerry says, "You fight, you miserable bastard. Fight for that bench. Fight for your parakeets. Fight for your cats. Fight for your 2 daughters. Fight for your wife. Fight for your manhood, you pathetic little vegetable. You could not even get your wife with a male child." Peter says, "It's a matter of genetics, not manhood, you monster. I'll give you one last chance. Get out of here and leave me alone." He holds the knife with a firm arm, but far in front of him, not to attack, but to defend. Peter's defensive posture shows that he is intrinsically non-violent. However, Jerry's provocations finally force Peter to take a position, to take a stand. Peter reacts by stabbing Jerry with knife. Jerry's murder underscores the deep emotional and existential isolation experienced by both characters. Jerry's aggressive need for connection, even if it means self-destruction, is met with Peter's violent yet defensive act. The stabbing can also be seen as the ultimate failure of communication between Jerry and Peter. Jerry's death signals the collapse of the possibility of any real connection, leaving Peter to grapple with the consequences of his act. After Jerry's death, Peter stands in shock over Jerry's dead body. He is with a new burden like Jerry was previously. He is now a killer. Talking about these 2 characters, Stephen Bottom writes, "Living on the margins of society, Jerry is the anti-establishment, counterculture hero. He is the dark stranger, the social outcast, the orphan, the other. His goal is to break down barriers, to live his life more fully, an LB imperative as well as a beat mantra." Peter is the opposite. He is passive, inhibited, unwilling to give up his solitude for confrontation, a conformist and isolationist. He is both Jerry's nemesis and his hope, enemy and heir. Living the credo of the organizational man, Peter is an upper middle class drone whose job, family and lifestyle validate the mainstream rituals. Edward Albee's The Jew Story is a metaphoric play.
The Jew here is a metaphor for human society. The society is the case where all human beings are imprisoned and live like animals. They are imprisoned by their habits, they are imprisoned by the societal norms, where they have no freedom, and often they grapple with the meaning of existence. In fact, Jerry's dog story symbolizes human beings' desire for deeper human connections with each other, which has remained an impossibility. Jerry and Peter symbolize Christ and Peter. You would remember the story of Peter denying Christ 3 times. At the Last Supper, Jesus has predicted that Peter would deny him 3 times before the rooster crows. Peter insists that he would not deny Christ and would remain loyal to him. However, after the arrest of Jesus, Peter denies him 3 times, to a girl, to a bystander, and to a group. And soon after, the rooster crows. When the rooster crows, Peter remembers the words of Jesus and weeps in remorse. After the resurrection, Jesus forgives Peter. He asks him 3 times whether he loves him or not and provides him with redemption. Similarly, the story of Peter and Jerry is also human beings' search for redemption. The play dramatizes isolation and alienation of modern American man. It also brings to the fore the class inequalities that exist within American society, represented by Peter, the bourgeois middle class man, and Jerry, who belongs to lower strata of American society. The play also stages existential search of man for meaning in an indifferent world. The play also, through Peter and Jerry, the play dramatizes the conflict between conformity and individual. The play can be seen as a critique of the absurdity of human life and ultimately leaves the audience with an unresolved tension. That's all for today. We'll discuss the next play by LB in our next class. Thank you very much.